Hello, I'm Esperanza, and today's presentation is about pesticide regulation in Mexico. The contents will be legal framework, classification according to its function, information required for registration, and import of pesticides. There are 3 government agencies in Mexico that are participating in the registration of pesticides. Those agencies are Federal Commission for the Protection Against Sanitary Risks, COFEPRIS, Ministry of Environment and Natural Resources, SEMARNAT, and Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development, SAGARPA. There are 3 main laws that regulate the pesticide in Mexico. Those laws are General Health Law, General Plant and Animal Health Law, and General Law of Ecological Equilibrium and Environmental Protection. The pesticides and plant nutrients require sanitary registration, that is, a marketing authorization. The registration is a shared process between the agricultural, environmental, and health Mexican authorities. Therefore, it's a joint evaluation, and only with the approval of the agricultural and environmental authorities, the Ministry of Health will grant this authorization. The registration will be valid for 5 years and may be renewed for equal periods of time if the person or company interested requests so. There is a regulation for registration, export and import permits and certificates for export of pesticides, fertilizers, and toxic and hazardous substances. This regulation is very specific and establishes the general registration procedure and the specific requirements by pesticide type. The regulation was published on the Official Gazette of the Federation on December 28, 2004. There is also an agreement by which the procedures, services, and formats registered in the Federal Register of Procedures and Services are released and used by the Ministry of Health through the COFEPRIS. This agreement contains the official forms and the specific procedures that correspond to each pesticide type. It was published on the Official Gazette of the Federation on January 28, 2011, and the recent amendment on January 24, 2022. We'll leave you valuable links in this presentation for you to get into in case you want to dive in this regulation and agreement. There is a classification on the Mexican pesticide regulation that is according to the composition and uses. The pesticides under the composition classification are the chemical, biochemical, microbial, and botanical. And the pesticides under the uses classification are the agricultural, forestry, miscellaneous, pecuary, industrial, domestic, and gardening. Before submitting the application, it's important that the manufacturer of the pesticide requires a sanitary license to COFEPRIS. This sanitary license must comply with the procedure 05 or 22B under the Agreement of Procedures for COFEPRIS. They will review, above all many things, the floor blueprint, a worker training program, the MSDS, the worker health surveillance program, the special security systems such as sprinklers, smoke detectors, leakage detection alarm, and also the technical information about production lines, about the raw materials, residues, process description, and the flow diagrams. The actual fee for the request of the sanitary license is 15,944.93 Mexican pesos. But be aware that these fees change every year. But what is a pesticide, you might ask? Well, a pesticide is any substance or mixture of substances intended to control any pest, including vectors that transmit human and animal diseases, unwanted species that cause damage or interfere with agriculture and forestry production, as well as defoliating and desiccating substances and desiccants. This is the definition of the Article 278 of the General Health Law. We will look into three more definitions. The microbial pesticide is a product formulated with microorganisms such as bacteria, viruses, fungi, or yeast, nematodes, or protozoa used for pest control purposes. The registration request is the procedure 06006. A botanical pesticide is a substance extracted directly from plants and are conditioned to be exploited for pest control. The registration procedure is the 06007. A biochemical pesticide is a substance that occurs naturally and is used for pest control through non-toxic mechanisms, including insect sex pheromones that interfere with reproduction. The request procedure is the 06005. The government agencies that we mentioned earlier has a legal framework. We will start with the COFEPRIS. COFEPRIS regulates the registration of pesticides for use in Mexico, as we mentioned earlier, importation of pesticides, authorization for product formulation, the sanitary license, the notice of operation for pesticide traders, and authorization for advertising in agrochemicals. There is the legal framework for SAGARPA, and this is the registration of pesticides for use in Mexico, the notice of operation for pesticide traders, and a certification of formulating maquiladora and formulating companies by maquila. A maquiladora is a third company that manufactures a product on behalf of a company. If your pesticide is for agricultural, pecuary, or vegetal nutrient, you must request a biological efficacy opinion to SAGARPA. Along with, you will need to attach the following requirements for this request to SAGARPA. That is the administrative data, product identity and composition, the physicochemical characteristics, physical characteristics related to use, the analytical methods, toxicological information, target pest, and product label, along with the ecotoxicological information. Once you have this biological safety opinion, you might attach it to the registration request and you will obtain your marketing authorization. But don't be afraid, we'll help you through the process. Finally, the legal framework for Semanart is registration of pesticides for use in Mexico, import and export of products, and final waste disposal. What documents will be required for the registration request? Well, the registration process or the registration request documents are as follows: administrative information, technical information, physicochemical characteristics, toxicological characteristics, physical characteristics related to the use, biological efficacy, and maximum residue limits. What is the registration process and accepted data? Well, for physicochemical and toxicological studies, COFEPRIS considers valid studies made under international guidelines and under good laboratory practices statement. In the case that a specific requirement does not apply to a particular product presentation, then the specific regulation considers the waiving of this requirement with the respective technical justification. It's important to mention that the incorporation of biocides, or currently called industrial pesticides, with a harmonization perspective. The register in the origin country will no longer be requested. So if the product is not registered in the country of origin, don't worry, it can be registered in Mexico. A new rule has been proposed to allow Mexico to participate in a regular basis in the Joint Review Program. Also, for microbial, biochemical, and botanic pesticides, biopesticides, a list of reduced risk products will be generated. So soon, the products in the list will be exempt for the major requirements. The inclusion criteria is currently under development. So as you can see, Mexico is working with these changes on the regulation to making the registration of pesticides more easy for the companies. The guidelines for pesticide labeling are the NOM 45 SSA1 1993, NOM 046 SSA1 1991, and NOM 232 SSA1 1993. If you follow this regulation on your labeling, you won't have any problem to sell your product in Mexico. The importation process is very important to know once you want to bring your product in Mexico. First of all, your pesticide must be already registered in Mexico. This means that you must have the marketing authorization granted in Mexico in order to request your importation permit. If you decide to skip this part and bring your product to Mexico, you might not get your pesticide released from customs. So we suggest you to wait and have your marketing authorization for your pesticide before you request your importation permit. So the steps are, so you need to submit your marketing authorization, you request and make the payment of rights, and submit or attach the material safety data sheet in this importation request, and then you will be granted your importation permit for the pesticide that you want to sell in Mexico. Once you have the importation permit, you can ship your product to Mexico, and with that importation permit, you can release your product from the custom. So, to which agency we need to present these requests? Well, with COFEPRIS, you request the importation permit and the registration request. With Semarnat, you request the efficacy data opinion from your pesticide before request the registration. There are several fees that you need to pay to these agencies for the registration and the importation permits. The fees for the marketing authorization or the registration request are listed in this table. It's according to any toxicology category depending on the pesticide that you want to register. The fees are currently listed on the table, but be aware that these fees may change every year. Also, the fees to import licenses or the import permits are listed in this table and also depends on the toxicology category of your pesticide and if it is a plant nutrients or the toxic substances. It's important to make the payment beforehand, request the importation permit, because this document will be attached to the request. Well, the time for evaluation for the marketing authorization request or the registration request is 120 days. To get your importation permit is only 30 days. So you might, as I said before, you will want to wait until you have your marketing authorization before you request your importation permit. It's important, finally, to mention that these timelines can be much longer depending on the quality or the completion of all the documents that you submit with your registration. A marketing authorization on average takes 1 to 2 years depending on the toxicology category and also of all the documents that you submit on your request. I hope you found great value on today's presentation. These are the references that we took in order to present this information. And finally, if you are interested in our services, don't hesitate to reach out. We are located on the US, Brazil, Mexico, China, and Japan. Thank you and be safe.